So hi and welcome everybody. This is the TLC's version of um, things you need to know for evaluating online courses. And thank you everybody for coming. Like I said earlier, please feel free to stop, interrupt with questions or clarifications. This is talking about the TFO process. Um, it also applies, there's not any deans here, but we're going to be telling the deans the same thing for doing instructor evaluation. And a lot of the same things go into the POCR process, the peer online course review. Um, so having said that, the TFO process, trained faculty observation, I think you all know the big picture. That's in our contract that we go through it as part-timers every so often. It's contractual. It's a very formalized process, but really it's keep in mind that it is really an opportunity to see other people's courses, to see what other people are doing, to be able to talk to other instructors. It's an opportunity for both sides to learn and to keep on improving the quality of education that we give to our students. Would you agree with that, Scott? I think somebody else is talking to you.
I'm
Or was
sorry,
it?
Peter. I wasn't. I
That's
was a
okay.
little distracted.
That's quite all right.
Okay.
Um, but like I said, you all know this, improving student learning, keep on practicing new techniques, and of course, to check off all the relevant checklists, those being our employment contract, state laws, and the accreditation processes. They all have their eyeballs on this TFO process. Um, I'm not going to go that much deeper into the timeline of events and all of the different cover sheets and forums that there are. Those are all here online. So gavilan.edu/staff. You can find the link there at /staff. But there is a multitude of paperwork to do. And again, to reiterate one more time, although it takes place on a lot of Word documents and checklists, this is really a chance for teachers to talk to each other, um, to improve our courses, to get friendly feedback and see what works and what doesn't. So the whole process kind of hinges on you, the reviewer, talking to the teacher that you are reviewing. That means getting together and making sure that you both have a good idea of what the timeline is. For online classes in particular, it's really helpful to just talk about the course overall and how it's going. Um, what you feel is the strengths of it and what are the weaknesses of it. And this is before any actual review or getting into the show, because so much of it is kind of invisible. And what you, the reviewer, are actually going to be seeing is just a slice in time, say a week, from a student's point of view. So right off the bat, you know that you're not going to see everything. You won't have access to every single interaction. So it's good to talk to the teacher ahead of time, um, and see how they feel about the course overall. And that would be the time for them to add you as a student into the course. And you would agree on, that I'll be looking at the course, say, from October 15th through October 25th or whatever, a week-ish, and have them put you into the course. We like to have the teacher put you into the course rather than Sabrina or I, because that way there's no surprises about random people showing up in your online classroom. We are happy to help if the teacher doesn't know how to do that, especially we're happy to help them do that. But we try to keep that kind of enrollment changes in the hands of the teacher. So when you look at an online course, you're definitely doing everything that a teacher does, and then some. So I tried to put it together in an equation here that it's the teaching plus the technology that equals the student experience. It's both of those. So in a fully online course, um, there is more work to do, and there is more things that can go wrong. There's more to evaluate, but you're still evaluating both aspects. You're still looking at their teaching, and you're also looking at the use of technology and whether it's going well, or if there's problems. These are um, just some home pages that I pulled, and you can see just from little thumbnails that there's quite a variety. Some just are a list of modules. Um, some are that plus the announcements. Some are custom home pages. Um, some are home pages that look very much like a list. And I'm not saying any of these are worse than the other. There's a time and a place for everything. And a lot of that is going to depend on what exactly kind of course they're doing. So this list here, this is my opinion of in order from least to most difficult. And not to say that anything can't be difficult, but really when you get to a fully online asynchronous course, it starts to be really challenging to have students feel like they're actually in a class, not a correspondence class, but an actual class where they're interacting with people. It's 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 just that everything that we do in a room full of 30 people without even thinking about it, making eye contact, asking if they understand or if they're confused by anything, um, noticing that people are gone, all of those things that good teachers do, they have to be very consciously and explicitly done through the technology in a fully online course. So that's where the biggest challenge is. I put HyFlex in as a question mark because that could turn out to be even harder, but we're going to have to see how that develops. Um, Also, with respect to this, all the different versions of home pages, um, it really depends on what type of course that you're doing for what's most appropriate. If you have, or if your reviewee has an in-person course and they just use Canvas, then it's perfectly fine for them to just kind of have a list of stuff without real context to it because the context comes from the classroom. Same with a hybrid course. If you're there in person and able to talk about what's online, that relieves a lot of the confusion of getting to a course homepage and trying to figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So, Bill, hybrid versus HyFlex. Hybrid course, we've been running those for over a decade now. That's something that it's in the schedule both in person and a portion of the course is online. So we do that a lot with labs, with art classes, a lot of things. So it is still a real online class, and you have to know that the online portion is real class time. You are delivering instruction that you can't just pawn it off as reading or something. Those are part of the semester hours are happening online. So that's a hybrid course. We've been doing them forever. HyFlex is brand new. We're not technically really offering it yet. We have some fits and starts in different departments, but that is running a course simultaneously in a classroom on campus and live over Zoom. So it would be a combination of an in-person course and an online live course that happens at the same time, that is the same teacher, that students could be there or not at their discretion and could possibly switch during the semester if and when they needed to. And then online live has no scheduled component. So that's when you're purely communicating through Canvas. Does that make sense, Bill?
So online live is if the meetings are like on Zoom and they use Canvas?
They are on Zoom and they're happening simultaneously in the classroom.
Got it.
In a classroom.
No. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Simultaneously.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Online live is on Zoom.
Okay.
Now I'm confusing you. HyFlex is the simultaneous one, and that's to be rolled out really in spring of 24. They're talking about outfitting classes right now. And it's all TBD at this point. So I wouldn't worry about that right now. This is another example. Again, with a fully online asynchronous course, the real challenge is to situate your students and to let them know what's happening right now in the course, what's going on. And I like to put it, the big question is, what am I supposed to be doing right now? At all points in the semester, that your students should be able to answer that question. What am I supposed to be doing right now? So you can kind of imagine that if you're running into just a big list of things, and especially if they're not clearly named, like, chapter 1.pdf, are you supposed to be reading that? Are you supposed to do something with it? Is it mandatory? Is it optional? Is it just something neat? That's the kind of thing that a fully online teacher has to lay out very clearly and explicitly. So for my example here of an online course, this is the first thing that students see, and they're seeing the weekly modules with the current week highlighted. They're seeing due dates, those come in automatically with assignment due dates. They, especially for that first week of course, they see a friendly welcome video with the actual instructor talking to them and kind of welcoming and giving guidance. And if you clicked in further into this class, you would see that every week there's actual words, actual paragraphs of text saying, "Hi, everybody, it's week 5. This is what we're doing. This is what the reading is. This is what the assignments are." It's that setting up the student just in there, what they should be doing, that is the real challenge. So in general, a fully online class where you show up and just see a list of stuff, that should be a first little possible red flag that if they don't get clear within the first item of that list, then you that's something to talk about. Does that make sense? And so that I could kind of repeat that advice for a lot of different parts of an online class. In an assignment, in discussions, in a face-to-face class, you have that chance, or a student has the chance to say, "Wait, I don't understand." So online, the teacher has to build in those opportunities to catch people who don't understand. And as always, it's a trade-off of being too wordy, and your students don't really like to read all that anyways, versus being too brief and they didn't quite catch what you were trying to get across. That's a balance. And then Scott, for HyFlex training, Sabrina and I are waiting to see what's happening. We need to see some equipment get installed into a room before we can really address it. But yes. So, like I said earlier, there's a teaching aspect that didn't ever change. It is going to look different, but a good teacher has to be able to deliver instruction, however that might look like. They have to present the material, um, be it in a video lecture, be it in PowerPoints that the students will go through, PowerPoints plus their own notes, um, a presentation that is recorded with the teacher's voice. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but that's still going to be present in an online class. The assignments are still going to be there. They're going to be relevant to the material of the course. They're going to have, decent turnaround time and good feedback that'll help the students with what they're working on. Um, all those aspects have not changed in an online class. The assessments, the tests, the quizzes, the rubric I'll talk about later goes into pretty good detail of, are they relevant? Are they scored fairly? Do they relate to the course objectives and to the course, the presentation of material? And then probably the hardest aspect and the most stressful one for us with accreditation is the amount of interaction that happens in a class. And we mean both interaction between the students and the teacher and interaction between the students with other students. And those are must-have aspects of any sort of online course. Interaction can be, or it can come in many possible ways. Announcements that go out on a regular basis, especially announcements with a thread attached so people can ask questions about it. Weekly discussion forums, shared documents like group projects that are on Google Docs that multiple people are working on at the same time. A teacher who is giving good detailed feedback on assignments is an excellent form of interaction and one that is hard for a reviewer to see. So that would be something that you talk about with the teacher, because you want to talk about the things that you can't obviously see, because they count. So you basically ask them about the feedback that they're giving to students.
So do you recommend a question, an open question discussion list for any class regardless? Because I've seen some that don't really have one of those. And that seems like a really good point for that interaction.
Yeah, I like that. My classes are a little bit different than, actual sections. You can, I like having a just all semester long open Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some people do one a week, which I think is excessive unless you turn off older discussions, I guess. But I think there's a happy medium of maybe have one open thread a month that, because you can lose track of all those threads of discussion. If you have 3 or 4 classes and you have a weekly discussion in each one, like I don't want to even imagine having to go in each one a couple times a week and keep on top of it all. So yeah, I like one per month, and then you can kind of keep it tight and it won't grow too long. I'm not a fan, and just personally, I'm not a fan of you must make 3 posts and 3 responses. I think that doesn't do a lot for being genuine, but I don't have any good answers for alternatives to that. So that's the teaching aspect. That's going to be there in person or online. The technology aspect, I think we're more worried about in this session, and that's going to be, is the teacher using the tools they have available to the best degree that that they're able to, or to their fullest usefulness. And when I say the tools that they have available, that's going to mean the different features of Canvas. So the baseline features of Canvas, web pages, the assignments, or the different, little subtypes of assignments like the Turnitin assignments or any different plugins that you might use, um, discussion forums, the studio video recording feature, which is available to students as well as teachers. Um, all of those kind of Canvas fundamentals, are they being used right? If the teacher is saying this is your assignment, you need to turn it in, is that actually an assignment, or did they write that on a page and the students are confused about where to actually turn it in? Are all of those things visible at the right time? Does the grade book make sense? Or are there old assignments from last year with funny due dates that are from an old semester on them? Just the navigation sidebar and the overall organization of the class. Do the links work? Do they go where the teacher intends them to? Does it make sense? Can you tell where you are in the class? And are there times when it's totally confusing, or do things tend to flow from one into the other into the other? That's hard to kind of quantify, but it's if you spend time in a course, then you'll get a feeling for, just for do things make sense? And that's kind of one of the most common complaints that students have is um, organization and just confusion about where they're supposed to do things, where they're supposed to turn things in. Um, and that comes from a lot of little details. Like I said, little broken links and errors, wrong due dates, um, an old link from a different semester that goes to a page that's no longer published. All of those things add up into a student experience that is either positive or negative. Go for it, Daniel.
Yeah, as far as like you were saying to navigate and where they're supposed to do assignments and stuff, I was just wondering. I usually just keep grades. I use the modules page for assignments, and then so as far as their navigation menu, grades and modules available. But I usually don't have any like the quizzes page, the assignments page, because it's just a repetition of the same stuff that they should access on the. Is that an okay way to do it, or is that as far as, because I feel like there's like 4 or 5 different places in the navigation menu they could theoretically find an assignment. So I narrow it.
That's how I like to do it. It's definitely not the only way, but I like to do the same thing, which is hide everything except for what they absolutely need.
Yeah.
Which for me is that same, the modules, and then they see everything at the time that you want them to. There's kind of a less, how do I put it? There's a more hands-off way, which is to leave those assignments, quiz, discussion links open. And that kind of fits more if it's an in-person class and if you tell students, okay, go to assignments and find this one. It's definitely a different vibe. It's a different feeling. It doesn't lend itself to a week by week exposition of what the teacher wants a student to see, but that is kind of the default way. And I think for full on 16-week online courses, the way that you described is the ideal. Any other opinions on that, Scott? Unmute yourself.
I was gonna say that sometimes when my students struggle is if I carry over assignments from one class and transport it into another class, and oops, I forgot to change some of the old due dates that were once in the other class, and and suddenly the grade book is really cluttered because I've brought in old assignments. I mean, that's what I have to work on, is how to bring in material and just then go through it very carefully, because I've had situations where students see old due dates, get very confused, see assignments that I'm not giving them. So yeah,
Mhm.
so just cleaning all that up is so important.
Yep, it can turn into a challenge, especially long running courses that you've brought in multiple times. Um, Especially the assignments list and therefore the grade book can get
Mhm.
really hectic. And that is, FYI, the assignments link directly controls the grade book. So all those extra columns in the grade book, those are there because you haven't deleted or unpublished stuff on the assignments page. Also on the assignments page, there's a little hidden item up at the top in that little 3-dot menu where you can deal with all the due dates for all the assignments all on the same page. That's a nice one to know about.
Wait, it allows a range?
It just has an open form for every assignment to set the, visible on, hidden on, and due on all 3 dates.
Where was
Nice.
that again? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I missed that. Where's that grade where you do all the due dates at once?
It's the assignments page, upper right-hand corner, the menus that have 3 little dots. Um, it's that. Um, yeah, it's something like all course due dates or something like that. Um, Other aspects that are can be problematic, multimedia, the video stuff we mostly have pinned down pretty well, but you want to be aware of, any videos that don't have captions or the studio works well if they're going out to use a different, some service out there on the web. You kind of want to keep an eye on that and see that it's actually working, that it's not too confusing if they go outside of iLearn. And you do want to be aware of it's mostly automated at this point, but just whether things are accessible or not. Pages have headlines, videos have captions. Scott has a comment.
Sorry. Um, so sometimes I'll record things onto the cloud and it'll show the captions, but not every single word is right.
Mhm.
Um, is sometimes I'll do that with some live Zoom, like where there are synchronous elements and asynchronous. Sometimes we'll record parts of it, so it's like, oh, some words that I'm saying are captured wrong, some words students are saying are captured wrong. Do I have a duty every single time to go in and make sure that every word is correct? Or, because I'm
So
just thinking of the labor involved
yeah,
with
it's always I think captions are always nice. Here's what the law is exactly is any material that is required for your course to be viewed needs to have full accurate captions. So anything that's required viewing that they need to do to pass the course or that you're calling mandatory. So that leaves out, your online live Zoom sessions that you record as a courtesy for somebody who couldn't be there. That doesn't fall under that. It's something that you do as a response if you don't want to type out your response to their essay and you want to, screencast it instead. That's not required for the whole class. So that doesn't fall under it. But anything that is officially course material or that is required viewing is needs to be fully compliant and fully captioned. And yes, fully compliant means actual 100% accurate captions with all the you know punctuation and capital letters and not done by a robot.
I'm just thinking about the hours and hours we put into our classes and the only compensation is in the class. But
Mhm.
anyway, that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, and that's kind of a skill, to be aware of a core of required material that you can carry over semester to semester, that you put that investment into versus some one-off things that you might do each semester in response to what your students are turning in or what you guys are talking about. It's definitely a skill to um, be stingy with your time. It is really required. It's not a laziness thing. You do have to figure out little ways to be careful with the time that you spend. Um, any other aspects of the technology? I didn't put down publishers, but they're a big deal. Go ahead, Julian.
Hey, thanks. I was just wondering, are there any updates on where we are with the captioning? Because I know that I think the chancellor's office was going out for some new vendors or something for the DECT grant. You have any updates on that?
I don't know. I don't know specifics. I,
Okay.
I mean, I think it's available at this
Okay.
moment with whatever old or new vendor.
Okay.
Um,
Do you know, is
but then
Jane
that's
still, do we still have Jane? Okay,
until
great.
December. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll reach out. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know I mean, I know the exact process starts with calling Jane. But
Right.
um, if if any part of their class goes out and uses outside stuff, most commonly a textbook publisher, then you have an extra challenge because it's hard for you as a reviewer to see what's happening with that publisher without paying for an access code, which you are not going to do. So probably what would make most sense in that situation is during the time that you sit down with the teacher, that's a part of what you talk about in the course, and you go over it with them. And you could spend, a little bit of time in the student view of that publisher site, seeing what the students see. And I do encourage you to do that. Which publisher and their online configuration is a big part of the student experience. And if there's issues with it, then everyone definitely needs to be aware of it. And many publishers have issues um, that there needs to be pushback on. So um, the My Math Lab, the Pearson stuff, the Spanish classes, there's a big chunk of departments that'll consistently be in that situation. So you don't want to brush that off because they can be pretty substantial parts of a class.
Peter, Ursula
Mhm.
had a comment in the chat.
Oh, I heard videos shorter than 5 minutes don't need captions. That's um no, no, to the degree that that makes them fall under what I said. But really the decision is it required material? Often those shorter videos mean that you're just responding, um, or that you're doing an off the cuff thing that's not necessarily mandatory, but the rule is it required for the course? So I said lectures or, content presentation that needs to happen in an online class, and it can take many different forms. So these are some examples. It can be all text. That was kind of the very olden days of online classes. I don't think that's students' favorite way because, they're also getting their textbook. Um, PowerPoints that you just do a link to the PowerPoint in the course. I would say that's a bare minimum that really isn't enough. I would expect to see some kind of value add from the instructor with the publisher's material. Um, a lot of time, a very common one is to record yourself doing a screencast, going through those PowerPoints. And I would say that's a pretty faithful, recreation of an in-person class. But there can be a lot of variations of that. Um, it could be other videos made by the teacher or not. Um, there's all kinds of options, but there does need to be actual presentation of the content. If and this will come into, assessment and quizzes and follow-on activities. If there's no real way of checking if the students are actually looking at the lectures, that's kind of a red flag too. I mean, there needs to be something. I mean, I guess it'll come down to a final exam, but ideally you want something to give a teacher a little bit more fine-grained feedback of if students are really participating or not. So if there's not a lot of activity on a weekly basis, except for PowerPoints, being listed out, that's a definite red flag. And then it's no problem to reuse lectures from semester to semester, but it's definitely possible for things to just get grossly outdated. And that's something that you want to keep an eye out for as well.
Question.
A talking head is a video just of a headshot, basically. Just like my little Zoom video here, or I could just record myself with my phone and talk. That's a talking head. Or we do the screencasting where it's the PowerPoint and a little box with your head in it talking. That's kind of a narrated screencast with a talking head. Any questions about lecturing?
Scott.
Yep. When there's an overuse of publisher material, I worry about teacher presence in the class. I absolutely do as well. And it's frustrating, and I can't help but think those teachers are lazying us out of jobs, because there's some publisher content where you can definitely sit back and relax, and at that point, what's the point of paying a full-time faculty all that money? You could just just buy the textbook. So definitely you wanna call out if you see an instructor being like that. And that could be for a list of modules that just gets thrown up, or for over reliance on a textbook publisher. Any other questions about lectures? They really run the gamut, so there is no right way to do it. There's a couple wrong ways.
If you're bringing in like an outside video, do you is best practice embedding or linking, or does it depend on where you're how whether or not like that embedding works, or is it dependent, I guess?
It gets tricky. That's a good question. So say there's a YouTube video. So first it depends on, does that video have good captions out there on the web?
Mm-hmm.
If so, I like to use their embed code in a page. There's a way to pass it through Studio as like one of your videos. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
if you do that, captions get weird.
Do you get double captions?
They don't seem to be as reliable.
Okay.
So I like just using their embed in a page on Canvas.
Okay.
You can link them out to YouTube too. It's not terrible. I don't like to send my students to the wild web.
Yeah, well, especially with autoplay turned on.
Mhm,
Um,
all the ads. So
yeah,
if
Canopy
that,
is
yeah,
another one of
there's
those.
library features that are great. If that video doesn't have captions out there on the web and it's part of your required watching, then you have an issue because you kind of need to. Studio doesn't really help with that situation, and you don't have control over that YouTube account. Then you need to get a little tricky and you need to ask me to download it for you so you can put it into your own studio account and
Okay.
get those captions.
Okay.
Or you need to do something tricky in that scenario because you do need to add those. It's not quite good enough to just do a transcript on the page below it. Um, it's so close, but it really doesn't meet the law. Um, that's definitely a challenging one. What about copyright? If you caption a video that's not yours. So copyright is, it's the main problem is profiting off a video that's not yours or causing someone to lose profit off their video. Um, so you're allowed to point anybody out on the web to watch a public video, no problem. By extension, and I'll get myself into trouble here. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to kind of vacuum it up, put it into your studio account, add captions, and only show it to your students. Um, there's times when you don't want to do that, like if it's an actual movie on a DVD that you're clearly just showing to people.
Ooh.
You do want to look for legit ways to do it, especially through the library. Um, but in general, if it's publicly available, you're not ripping anyone off by pointing your students at it. Go ahead, Daniel.
Say I just I don't know if this is the best way, but in my personal experience, if there's a YouTube video I want to capture for just to have my own copy, I'll just use QuickTime. I have a Mac, I use QuickTime Player, and then for the audio, I use Loopback. And then and then I just figure I'll just use the fair use doctrine if anyone sues me. So I don't know if it's the best way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my thing too. I have a little command line that'll download YouTube videos. And it is, as teachers, we have a lot of leeway with the fair use rules. Um, and really, the rule of thumb is, are you depriving somebody of the profit off of their work? That's like morally and legally, the way to get sued is to cost somebody money.
True.
Um, those are if I was had more eyes on me, I would toe the line a little bit closer, but um, those are pretty safe guidelines.
There's also the totality rule to keep in just while fair use is fair use, if you take the entire thing, you're closer to the line, if not over.
Hmm. Hmm. Versus excerpts.
Yeah.
Those are all very good questions. So when you look at assignments, um, again, with the clear descriptions of what you're expecting from your students, can it be understood? Is it clear? Is it clear what you want from them or what the teacher wants from them? Are the due dates accurate? And then bonus points for a grading rubric. I think that's really ideal in any kind of teaching because it really lays out explicitly what is A level writing. Here's 5 different aspects of the assignment that I'm looking at, and here's what an A looks like, and here's what a C looks like, and here's what an F looks like. So it lays it out very explicitly to students, and I think makes your job grading, or the teacher's job grading, much easier. And something that you can't see right off the bat that you do need to talk to the instructor about is the kind of feedback that they give. And ideally, you would go into that speed grader of some old assignments right there with them, and just kind of go over some feedback that they gave to students. Just like in teaching in general, um, some of the best learning happens when you practice something, do it wrong, and get feedback, and you're able to correct it, and have all that happen in a timely manner. So those, those are the kind of things you're looking for in an online class as well. And I'm going to start rushing a little bit, but any other any other comments about the assignments and the assignment tool, Scott?
Just, I put it in the chat, but if we're observing a class, we can't always see the feedback that is being given, and I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, can I have access to your grade book so that I can see the feedback? But a lot of the feedback happens in sometimes discussion boards that I'm not able to enter into and see any kind of exchange, or the communication is private. So do you have any suggestions for if I'm observing a class and I have to comment on how well the teacher is communicating with the students, how I can respond to that if I can't see the feedback?
Personally, I think you need to sit down with that teacher in front of a computer, either in person or on Zoom, and have a little session where the two of you, you see their screen and they go
Yeah.
through some of those things. Same with the textbook or any publisher website. Um, Same with, discussion boards or messaging of students, and the feedback on assignments is a part of that. That's there's so much excluded from student access that you just kind of have to do that.
Doesn't it also give them an opportunity to kind of show you things that you might not find on your own?
Yeah, exactly.
Here, I'm particularly proud of this.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be all part of that same session, And here's what I think I've done good at, and here's what I've found to be really challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just going to be a fact of life with the way that online classes are. So having a side-by-side session with their instructor access, it just needs to be part of it. Mhm. So announcements are an example of one of the core tools of Canvas they're really useful because they go out to email. On the settings page, you can set so that the last 1, 2, 3, or 4 announcements are at the top of the course. You can put in videos, you can put in pictures, and it's just a way. It's like that first 5 minutes of class where you welcome everybody back and make sure everybody knows what's going on.
That's awesome.
That's
Ursula had an interesting question.
last time I invited, not as a student. Yeah, I think if you both agree, it's just fine to put your evaluator in as a teacher. So at that point, they can see everything. They can see all 16 weeks. They can see the grade book and the speed grader and all feedback that is given. Personally, I'd be more comfortable with that if I was being reviewed, because that's, then there's no question about, what you're not seeing. But in many conversations, I think the consensus around the school is, assume a teacher only wants you in it there as a student, and you can talk about higher access than that, but it's not mandatory. Um, yeah, and there's a level of trust there because it is way more access than you would if you were watching one or two lectures in a face-to-face class. Um, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you put your dean in there as a teacher because that's a whole different story. But going in as a teacher gives a way more accurate view, but it's at that point it's wide open. Go ahead, Scott.
So I'm just looking at some of the TFO questions, and so one of them says, were clear, consistent methods and procedures used? And I know, like, if I'm just looking at one module, right? If I'm looking at one module from an online teacher, I don't know if consistent methods are being used unless I go into the other modules. I can't tell if this is a procedure or method. I could make assumptions, but unless I look at what's in the other modules, I don't know. And what do you suggest in that? Because I don't want to feel like I'm going throughout the entire teacher's course, but at the same time, I don't know how to answer that question.
So I would say the vast majority of classes leave previous weeks open. So going off the syllabus and the very first, week 0 or introductory parts, I don't think it's overstepping your bounds to go back and either look a month back or look at the first, that first initial welcome to the course. This is who I am. This is what we're doing. That is a really, really critical part of the course. And I don't think it's overstepping at all to go back and glance at that. It's very rare for teachers to hide that as the semester goes on. Um, but
Can I ask one more That's helpful, Peter. May I ask one more TFO
yeah,
question? Just, based on the form, there's the one question that says, was the class time used effectively? So if I'm looking at the module, do I just ask myself, does what's in this module feel overwhelming? Or does it feel manageable? Does it feel like, are those the kinds of questions that I'm asking when I'm asking myself if class time is used effectively?
yeah. I mean, is the student's time being wasted? So remember, courses have what do they call it, a semester hour. A 3-unit course assumes 3 hours a week in class, with some division for an 18-week or a 16-week course. So 3 units means 3 hours of class time. Even in an online class, we carry that over. And that, it starts to become really gray area because it's not necessarily 3 hours of lecture video content. It might not even be video content, but so you kind of have to do, some some vague interpreting. Is there 3 hours worth of material? And more importantly, is it the relevant material? Are you wasting students' time? Is the time that they spend on the content, however it may look, is the time those students spend on it spent well?
Thanks.
This is one more example of just the tools of Canvas. This is a Canvas page versus uploading a PDF. This is one of my go-to examples of using the tools right, because a PDF, while there might be plenty of good reasons to use it, there's also some drawbacks. And with about 50% of students on a tablet or a mobile phone with a small screen, they're going to run into those trade-offs. They're going to have the side scrolling or just challenges looking at something designed for 8.5 by 11 paper, looking at that on their phone. It's going to be more annoying, period. So that's not a hard and fast rule to never use a PDF. That
Yeah.
means that the trade-off is real.
One thing that I've noticed with the PDFs helping students in the library,
Mhm,
sometimes a PowerPoint will be delivered as a PDF,
mhm.
which doesn't then allow the students to save on printing by doing you know how like in PowerPoint you can do a handout,
Mhm,
3 slides and a place to write,
mhm.
or 6 slides or something like that. If you're uploading it as a PDF, you're limiting the student's ability to manipulate it.
There's a way around that I can show you. In
Awesome.
most print dialog boxes, you could say 9 sheets per page or something like that. Um, a PowerPoint as a PDF, you have the same issue. It's locked in as that shape, but
Exactly.
that shape does match a phone a little better. And so I would call that a little bit better.
Hmm.
But really the ideal for online material is it exists as an actual web page. The content can flow around to different widths. Um, it's starting to be
Responsive.
one of my bigger annoyances is want to hold on to those 8.5 by 11s. And that's all long gone for students. They don't even have printers anymore. They're over it.
Clutching the
So
pearls.
you said it before, all of these things add up to their experience. It's not one thing that you can fix and it automatically makes it better. You know, a poor experience is the sum of many little annoyances building
Mhm.
up over time, which means it's okay to have a mistake here and there. It's when they add up that it gets really frustrating. So we do about every other year, we do student surveys, and these are consistently what they say drive them nuts.
Daniel's got a question.
Oh, Daniel, is there a solution for required reading as a PDF? Um, the correct solution is to go back and find the source that made that PDF, like a Word doc, and get it out as some other format, whether by copying and pasting or save as HTML. That's rarely possible, and then you have a challenge. So you know, there's scientific papers and there's stuff out there. There's readings that you want to assign, and they come as PDFs. So that would be an example of when you're not really going to get around it, and that's just how it is. You do want to look, but sometimes that's just how it is.
Okay.
On top of a Canvas page, a student can now change the type of document. Yeah, none of that works very well. That's the thing about PDFs. It's really hard to get back to
Yeah.
any other format. It's kind of a one-way transition. Um,
Well, isn't a PDF essentially an electronic print?
it's made to be printed accurately. That's its purpose in life. It's made to reproduce that page exactly.
As
Mhm.
okay.
Sometimes you can highlight and copy out of a PDF, but by no means is that guaranteed to work. The PDFs get really weird out there.
Yeah.
So again, going back to the original source is always the best. Um, if that's not possible, often it isn't, then you go looking if for is it available as something else. Try a little bit. I would say don't knock yourself out because PDFs get really ugly, but try if you have access to Acrobat Pro, try and convert it back to something else. Try copying and pasting, but you're not expected to do that for every scientific paper, every little thing that you're passing on to students. So overall, being organized, having your links work right, um, making sure that the flow with the textbook publisher is good, not being overly reliant on it, being responsive to students who just get caught up in the, payment and access code and, the cycle of hell that sometimes happens with those interactions, um, doing the best that they can to help along with that. I know you can't really see that as a reviewer. And long reply times or kind of going radio silent. And that might not really be something that you can see as a reviewer, but those are what annoy our students the most.
Is there like a whitelist of publishers that have a good track record interacting with Canvas or whatever? And is there a blacklist
Mm,
of publishers that are not good at it?
I'm not the right person to ask that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we all have developed our personal preferences.
Okay.
Um, so we're kind of out of time. So but I do want you all to see the evaluation form versus this OEI rubric. And you can get to this rubric from our TLC homepage. And it has 4 different sections. It's pretty detailed, just like the rubric when I was talking about for student assignments. It's really well made for all these different aspects of a course and what a F looks like, what a C or B looks like, and what a plus looks like. It's awesome. I can't emphasize enough how well made this is, how little junk and filler there is.
So
And it,
FC, right?
yeah, incomplete, aligned, and exemplary. It really covers all the bases. And if you look through it, you realize there's really a lot of aspects to an online course that they don't all have to be exemplary, but if you've missed some or if you're falling down on some, they're really going to cause problems either for students or for accreditors. So it's good just as a checklist, but it's also good to remember um, what really high quality online teaching looks like. So it's formatted as the course itself, organization, um, the Canvas tools, the tools and techniques that they use for interaction with
Mhm.
students and amongst students. I think you're already gone. Assessments, and the 4th part is accessibility. So definitely, if you're evaluating an online class, get this, read through it, and then read through it again with the course in front of you. And then I'll tell you that this form has nothing to do with the actual process of what you have to turn in to Gavilan. So my advice, our department advice, is go through that rubric fairly closely and kind of check out each item. And if they're especially good or especially bad, make a note of it to look at as you fill out the real form. The actual form, it's going to have some parts on it that don't really apply to a distance ed class. Don't worry about it. It's going to be human beings reading this. They want to hear from you what the class is like. If it doesn't apply, then don't stress over it. Um, don't just write numbers without any explanation. The dean doesn't want to see that. A good dean will throw that back at you. And the instructor wants better feedback from you to actually improve their course. So you should be able to justify why you gave a 5 or why you gave a 1 or a 2. You should go into some depth of what you're actually telling the teacher that you're reviewing.
Every once in a while, if I feel like the reasoning is completely duplicative of another one,
Mhm.
I might do a number, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's
And
just like one off.
I wouldn't, yeah, don't bother. I don't feel obligated to answer a question because it's there. But you don't want to be, you don't, you don't want these check boxes to dictate the process.
Exactly.
They're a guide, but remember that you're talking to people trying to make things better for students. Go with that. The end. Any other questions?
Oh, of course, it's immaculate booger.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming and staying.
Thanks,
If I was
Peter.
online, I would just say, thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Absolutely.
Hey, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. It was wonderful.
Yeah, Nikki?
I have a quick question. So I hopped on a little late and I saw that this is being recorded. Can I access this, the first part somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good reminder to
Stop recording.
where are you?
All right, thank you.
No problem.